Hey, what's going on, everyone, and welcome to the official launch of Down the Block Sports. I'm your host, Alec, Walt, alongside co-founder Connor Robinson with the debut episode of the Alec Walt Show. On today's episode, we're going to speak to a very special guest from one of the most interesting teams in the NBA. Before we introduce my guest, let me introduce the co-founder himself, Mr. Connor Robinson. Connor, we have officially launched, man. How's it feel?
It feels like months of hard work and preparation are finally going to pay off.
Yeah.
It's awesome. I'm so glad that we were able to partner up with this, and let's just go ahead and kick things off, man.
Awesome. Well, before we introduce our very special guest, I just want to remind you guys, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Down the Block Sports. We have some more exclusive interviews, NFL draft videos, plus World Soccer previews. We have it all right here at the official launch of Down the Block Sports. So joining us is, I mentioned, someone who covers a very interesting team in the NBA. That team is the Charlotte Hornets. Joining us today is Rob Longo, the studio host and producer of the Charlotte Hornets Radio Network. Rob, welcome to Down the Block Sports, man. We appreciate you joining us.
Yeah, guys, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I feel honored to be the inaugural guest.
Oh, well, we appreciate your time today. Now, how many stations can say they launched with someone like Rob Longo? So I'm really excited. It's going to be a really awesome interview today. So when we talk about the Charlotte Hornets, we have to talk about the number 3 pick, the rookie, Mr. LaMelo Ball. Give me your thoughts on the rookie through the first 35 games of the season.
He's been something else, man. I mean, I talk to the play-by-play voice of the Hornets, Sam Farber, all the time, and we always discuss, I'm starting to run out of words to describe this kid. I mean, he is just something else. And the thing that people don't realize is, he's only 19 years old. He has not had a formal preseason, off-season workout to go through. A lot of people in Charlotte, I mean, it's kind of hard to tell because this team hasn't got a lot of national recognition until the last couple of weeks with the play of LaMelo Ball. And the notion here was, why is he not starting coming right off the bat? First game of the season, why is he on the bench? And for the first about, I think it was 13, 14 games, he was coming off the bench and he was playing 30 minutes, half hour of game time. So he was getting a lot of playing time, but then just out of necessity, he became the starter. And since he's become the starter, I mean, he's averaging almost 21 points a game, 6.2 rebounds, 6.7 assists. I mean, those are numbers that rookies have not put up since Oscar Robertson. And they are it is just unreal what he's been able to accomplish here in the Queen City. And I'm really excited to see where he's going to be able to go. Again, he's only 19. He's going to fill into his body. We don't even know if he's done growing yet. I mean, he's 6'7". Maybe he grows another inch or two. And he's getting a lot of comparisons right now to a young Magic Johnson. And I don't want to stretch it that far yet. I mean, we still got a ways to go to compare him to one of the greats like that. But, he's just been phenomenal to watch, and his teammates love him. And that's the really important thing. He passes the ball. He enjoys passing the ball. And when you play with a guy that's able to pass the ball like that and is willing to give you shots, your teammates are going to like you, and they're going to appreciate you a lot more. And it's just going to pick up that camaraderie in a season where it's really hard to do that. I mean, when you go on the road, you're isolated in your hotel room. You're not going to have team dinners or anything like that. You don't bond in a traditional sense. So the fact that he's been doing this in a year like this with a pandemic going on is really unique, I think.
LaMelo is actually in 4th for steals in the entire league as a rookie. That's insane. Did you think that him having maybe a little bit of time overseas helped prepare him for the NBA?
Yeah, he's talked about that a lot. I mean, the one knock on him coming into the draft was his shooting. When he was in Australia last year, he only shot 25% from beyond the arc. This season, though, he's shooting 45% as a starter from three-point land. So it's been a really impressive stretch for him to get to that point where he's been shooting in 3. But his steals, and it's all effort on that aspect. I mean, he plays with a ton of energy. He's been playing a lot of minutes lately, too, and they just got done with a really tough West Coast swing where they had to go out and play Utah. Then they had to go play Phoenix and ended up beating the Suns, who now have the second best record in the NBA. Had to go play Golden State. Yeah, they had to go play Golden State. They had to go play Sacramento, and then they had to play Portland on a back-to-back at 10:30 Eastern time. And then they finished it off with Minnesota, so it was a little bit easier. But that 6-game road trip was tough, and he's been playing a lot of minutes. And the fact that he's bringing that energy on the defensive side of the floor is something else. And a lot of it is anticipation. If the ball goes up on the offensive side of the glass, he'll hang around the backcourt or the front court, I should say, for a couple of seconds just to see if there's a lazy pass or anything like that. But he does a really good job on his switches. coming back from the backside, kind of reaching around, poking the ball through to get those easy steals. But he's been great defensively, and a lot of that energy has just transitioned over to the offensive side of the glass as well.
When you look at the Charlotte Hornets backcourt right now, since LaMelo's entered the starting lineup, Terry Rozier has been awesome. Now, when you talked about drafting LaMelo Ball, one of the main questions about the Hornets was how are they going to manage this backcourt? Obviously, Devonte Graham was someone that stepped up last year. Rozier has been pretty solid. And then you have the rookie there in LaMelo Ball. Again, those two have been awesome since they've been together in the backcourt since, I believe, February 1st when LaMelo entered the starting lineup. Just give me a little breakdown about how these two have been meshing together in the Hornets backcourt.
They've been doing a really good job. The problem now is, how are the Hornets going to be able to manage all of these players when they're healthy? Because LaMelo became a starter out of necessity, like I mentioned a little bit earlier, where Devonte Graham goes down. He was the starting point guard to start this season. The Hornets have used, I think it's something crazy. I think it's been 12 starting lineups this season through 35 games. So they haven't had a healthy roster essentially all season. Cody Zeller was hurt to start the year, and they've been really thin at the 5. So to go back to what you're talking about with Terry and LaMelo, they've just been a really good job. And it goes back to LaMelo wanting to pass the ball. And Terry Rozier has done a great job the last 2 seasons now that he's been in Charlotte. Ever since he came to Boston, he came from Boston, he's just done a great job with becoming kind of the man. He's been the guy that the offense has flowed through a little bit too. And it's just a sense of, okay, the defense cannot just key on LaMelo. And that leaves Rozier open for a lot of threes because a lot of his threes are catch and shoot. He can create his own shot, but a lot of times he's just open on the wing and he's able to bang down threes. I mean, there was a stretch in Wednesday's game last week where in Minnesota, now granted it is Minnesota and there's a lot of issues there. Third quarter, he comes down and he bangs 5 threes in the third quarter alone. I mean, he just got red hot and he's just that kind of guy that can catch fire at any point. So it's really exciting to see him. And the other thing too is I think that goes unnoticed is a big free agent acquisition in the offseason with Gordon Hayward. So now you got 3 guys on the offensive side of the ball that can really hurt you in different ways. And Gordon does a great job dribbling to his spots and creating his own shot. And if a team is going to try to double Gordon for some reason, then Terry's probably going to be open on the wing. And even LaMelo is really good at driving. And then he does such a good job while he's in the air deciding if he wants to shoot or if he wants to pass. His decision-making is great. And I think that gives a lot of reasons why Terry Rozier is having such a good season as well.
Well, you mentioned Gordon Hayward, as I want to follow up right here. I'm a Boston Celtics guy, as you can see from the banner hanging behind me. Terry Rozier and Gordon Hayward used to be former Boston Celtics. Hayward was a guy that was kind of stuck he was injured, that it took some time to get back, didn't really have the best role when he was in Boston, goes to Charlotte, and we're starting to see the old Gordon Hayward. Just tell me what you guys have been able to unlock, because what I'm seeing this year was at times most of the time not what I saw in Boston.
He was kind of the preconceived leader coming in this season in a sense where, this isn't a normal season. He was able to come in and be that guy right away. I mean, Charlotte hasn't had a big free agent signing like that in quite a long time. And the money, a lot of people didn't think the money was worth it. Why are we giving this guy a max deal? He's injury prone. He didn't put up a ton of numbers in Boston, but ever since he's come to Charlotte, he's putting up numbers like he was in 16-17, his final year at Utah, where he was an all-star. I mean, his last season in Utah through 31 games, he was averaging 22, 5.9 rebounds, 3.5 assists roughly through 31 games this season, 21.5 points per game, 4.5 rebounds, 3.9 assists. When he was in Utah, he was at 44, 36, 85. Now he's 48, 41, 86 shooting. So I think it's another sense of where it's LaMelo Ball just kind of making everyone better around him. Now, the downside with Gordon Hayward is he got a little bit injured in the preseason. He hurt his hand, and it's kind of been a nagging injury. He sat out a couple games on that West Coast swing where it was bothering him. So he's got to get healthy, and that's kind of the big key for this Hornets team is, if Gordon's healthy, they kind of go where he goes in a sense. But, LaMelo has done a really good job picking up the slack. Terry Rozier has done a great job picking up the slack. He's had multiple 40-point games this year, I believe. He's gone off for multiple 20-point quarters. He went off for, I think, 21 in the fourth quarter against Golden State at the beginning of February, where he hit a buzzer beater to win it. Draymond Green had a little bit of a meltdown and got a double technical, and Rozier went to the line and shot 2 foul shots to tie the game, and then he hit the game winner on the ensuing possession. But yeah, I mean, Gordon Hayward is returning to all-star form, and I think it was just kind of a sense in Boston where he was stuck a little bit. I mean, he was with Jason Tatum, and Tatum was starting to get, kind of be that emerging player that we see him have this season. So now that Gordon can kind of be his own player in Charlotte, and he really loves the area. A lot of people don't know this, but when he was looking at free agency out of Utah, he came to Charlotte and he really loved the area. The video production team, made this big, huge pitch to him when he visited the arena. They put a video on a video board saying, "Welcome to Charlotte, welcome home," all this stuff. So he really liked the area, and he's talked on a lot of multiple podcasts that he's been on and a lot of interviews he's done this season with Adrian Wojciechowski at ESPN and a couple other people. I mean, it's not easy having a family like he is and deciding that you want to opt out of the last year of your player deal in a place like Boston and then test the free agent market in the middle of a pandemic. So I give kudos to Gordon for trying to get a change of scenery. And you get the sense that he really wants to build something here, and he has the opportunity with pieces like LaMelo Ball and Terry Rozier.
So one thing the NBA, the players move like crazy. But one thing we've noticed is players going to big markets, pursuing other opportunities outside of basketball. That's why LA, New York, a lot of stars have been going to those markets. Charlotte, really outside of really drafting Kemba Walker, drafting LaMelo Ball, it has been the easiest place to attract free agents. Now, obviously, Gordon Hayward's a different situation. You're able to acquire him this past offseason. Do you think with the addition of a LaMelo Ball and now a Gordon Hayward looking like his old self, that Charlotte is pretty appealing now on the free agent market?
I would think so. It's just a matter of trying to fit all of those pieces together right now because you have so much young talent, and that's kind of the issue right now where the big glaring issue for the Hornets would be in the front court at the center position. You got a guy like Cody Zeller. He's consistent. He's the longest tenured player on that team. I think he's been there for 11 years. Bismack Biyombo had to start the season because Cody Zeller was hurt with a broken hand, and now Zeller has been dealing with a hip issue. Hopefully he's back after the All-Star break. He's missed, I think, the last maybe 6 or 7 games, and there's just a glaring notice on the glass where they're outmatched. I mean, almost every tip at the beginning of the game goes to the opposing team because they just don't have the height. And Cody Zeller's a 7-foot guy, and then you got Bismack Biyombo behind him, who I think is 6'9", 6'10", but he gives up a little bit of height. So I think there is room for there to be some free agent acquisitions. It's just a matter of trying to get the right pieces to fit because there's a lot of talent in the backcourt, which could obviously do a good job with being pieces for a potential trade or selling assets off or anything like that. But it's just going to be tough to decide who stays and who goes because there's so much young talent. I mean, you got Devonte Graham, Malik Monka has really stepped up this year. He's been coming off the bench and he's been scoring 20-plus points or 15-plus points, I think, the last 5-6 games. He's done a really good job. And then you got a couple guys in the G League that could probably step up at any time too. So it's going to be one of those things where who stays, who goes. A couple guys are in some contract years. Do you want to pay them the money? Do you want to try to go out in the free agent market and spend elsewhere? But looking at this free agent market coming up this season, it's going to be tough to find somebody like that because it's not this deep talent pool that we've seen the last couple of years with guys like Kawhi and Durant moving teams and being available in the free agent market. A lot of it's going to have to come through trades, and that's going to be an issue because the asking price, especially this season with the trade deadline coming up in a couple weeks, and a lot of players or a lot of teams still in the mix in the East. I think there's only about a 3-game difference that separates 4th place through 11th place. And you have that play-in game too. So not a lot of teams are eliminated yet. And that's going to be a big issue right now moving forward for the Hornets and seeing who stays and who goes.
Who do you think some potential, you just touched on for, the trade deadline, who do you think some potential targets are for Charlotte?
A lot of people are rumoring Nikola Vucevic in Orlando, but the problem with Vucevic is he doesn't really want to leave Orlando. He was in an article with The Athletic, I believe last week, where he said that, I want to stay in Orlando. I kind of want to build a legacy here. And he mentioned Damian Lillard. That's kind of what Dame's been able to do in Portland, where he's kind of been trying to will his team to the playoffs and be that guy to leave a legacy with just one team. And Vucevic is kind of in that similar boat. But the issue with that is it's going to, depend on the health of the team moving forward. Cody Zeller comes back healthy. Nobody right now that we know of has any sort of season-ending injury. Everybody's just kind of short-term on the shelf. Devonte Graham's been out about a month with a knee injury. Gordon's been nursing that hand. So it all is going to come down based on health and what this team wants to accomplish. The goal right now, I think, and hearing some words from Mitch Kupchak, the general manager of the Hornets, he was just on our podcast, our team podcast, the Hornets Hivecast yesterday, and he talked about, I don't want to sacrifice pieces now for the future where, they might not quite be there yet. If they are able to go out and get maybe one more guy in the front court in free agency or through a trade without giving up a ton, that's going to go a long way. But that's going to be the issue here because, if you get a guy like Vukovic, he's an all-star, what's the asking price going to be? I mean, you're probably looking at either Miles Bridges, PJ Washington, both, and then you're probably looking at an unprotected first-round pick. I mean, the asking price is probably going to be astronomical, especially in a market where there's not a lot of sellers. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens these next 2 weeks or so with it's going to be kind of moving day around the Eastern Conference. Who's a contender, who's a pretender, and it's going to all kind of shuffle down from there. And I think it's going to be one of those instances this year where, if you get, the first domino falls in a trade, then they're all going to start going. So it'll be interesting to see what happens the next couple weeks.
So looking at the roster right now, obviously you mentioned health being a concern. Assuming everyone is healthy, because we have seen different lineups over the last couple of days, since LaMelo has entered the starting lineup. If you were starting a playoff series today, everyone's healthy, and you had to pick your starting five, the Hornets' best starting five, who are the five players you put on the court?
The combo right now is probably LaMelo at the 1, Terry Rozier at the 2, probably PJ Washington 3 or Gordon Hayward at the 3, and then you put PJ at the 4, and then you got to start Cody Zeller. I think that's your best starting five out there right now, and they haven't had him in a while. I think that lineup's been played maybe 10 or 12 games so far, and I think they have like a 6-4 record with it. So that's probably your best bet. But I mean, we've seen Cody Martin in the starting lineup at the 3 a couple times. We've seen some 3-guard sets going against smaller teams like Golden State. So James Borrego's not afraid to switch it up. At the beginning of the season, he was still trying to tinker with his starting five, and I think that was just a casualty of having these new pieces come in like LaMelo and like Gordon, who don't get the benefit of a real preseason, a normal preseason and a normal training camp and that sort of thing, where it's just kind of roll out the basketball and go. So I think that's why this team got off to a little bit of a slower start, and a lot of people didn't know what to expect with LaMelo Ball coming in. I mean, third overall pick, they didn't like his shooting. They thought his shot looked bad, that it was going to, the form wasn't great there, but he's been able to prove everybody wrong. And they've just been trying to really nurse him and make sure that he develops into the player that he could potentially be. And a lot of the assistant coaches, when we have them on during halftime home games, when we talk about adjustments for LaMelo and that sort of stuff, they say, we're just going to let him go out. We're going to let him play his game. If he scores 20 plus points like he has been, that's great. That's an added bonus. We just don't want him to turn the ball over. And that's the biggest thing that they've stressed, is not making those typical rookie mistakes where they're going to turn the ball over a lot. Yeah, they might have a Trae Young stat line where they get close with a triple-double, but their team ends up losing by 15 because he turned the ball over 8 times. But it's just interesting to see what this team is capable of when everybody is healthy. And I know it sounds like a broken record when I talk about the health, but that's just kind of how this team goes. I mean, if one player goes down, the whole thing kind of falls apart. So we'll see what happens moving forward.
Well, looking at health and rotations and things like that, someone who's benefited from some playing time due to some injuries on the roster is Malik Monka. Tell me about his recent explosion and how you think he's going to fit in the rotation down the road.
He's done such a great job coming off the bench. I mean, if he's been doing this all year, he would be almost a no-brainer for a potential 6th Man of the Year award. But yeah, Malik has really turned it on the last about 8 games or so. He's averaging, he's hit over 15 more a game. He's been coming off and averaging almost 20. So he's done such a great job in that reserved role. And the thing that has helped Malik is he's matured a lot over the last year. And he's talked a lot about how he's gotten his mental health right. He's gotten, his mind right. And that kind of transitions over into the court. And he's just a simple guy from Arkansas. It's so funny to hear him talk because, they ask him, what do you like to do off the court? He goes, I just like to sit around, fish, and play with my dog. And he's so much fun to listen to. And he's a really good guy. And I think that the fact that he's a lot more relaxed now and he's starting to grow and mature a little bit has been great for the team. But now the issue is going to be, he's in a contract year. Is somebody going to throw him $20 million to come off the bench and chuck up threes and average 20 points like he's been doing it? Is he going to be able to be consistent here, because once you put that on tape that you can hit threes coming off the bench like that, your market price really inflates. And I don't know, what the Hornets are going to do long term with that, if they're going to decide to keep him, if they're going to decide to pay him or what. But yeah, Malik has just been a great job for this team. And it kind of goes back to that notion where, Terry Rozier might have a seat for a couple minutes, but now you got a guy like Malik Monka fresh off the bench, and he won them the game in Sacramento a couple weeks ago. I mean, they had no business winning that game. I think they were down 6 with like 30 seconds left, and Sacramento missed a couple of foul shots, and then coming the other way, Malik hit this crazy acrobatic reverse layup with about 0.4 of a second left to tie the game, and then he went to the line and sunk the free throw for a 1-point win. So he's definitely brought them a lot of confidence moving forward. And he's just another one of those guys that can drive the lane and even kick the ball if he has to. So makes this offense just that much more dimensional, especially with that second rotation coming in.
No, you said earlier as well that, there is a very narrow sort of gap between 4th and 11th. Where do you see the Hornets, who I believe are in 7th right now? Where do you think they finish?
It's going to be tough. I mean, a lot of people thought they didn't know what to expect with this team coming in, especially, again, in a season like this where you're only playing 72 games. It's almost a little bit of a sprint. This schedule is really grueling. I mean, especially second half for the Hornets, it's going to be tough. I mean, they got 19 home games, 18 road games. The nice thing, though, is they are going to get some fans back coming up this week. On Thursday, they're going to have 500 frontline workers. That's kind of a thank you for what they've been able to do over the past year to keep us healthy and safe to the best extent that they can. And then the following game against Toronto or Tampa Bay, whatever you want to call the Raptors this season, they're going to have 3,000 back in the seats, 15% capacity. So that's going to be a big boost, because a lot of times, especially on this West Coast trip, James Borrego, the coach, and a couple of the players I mentioned, it felt like a normal basketball game when they went to places like Utah and Arizona that are having fans back in the stands. They said it felt like a normal game. It gave a little bit more juice, gave a little bit more energy. But according to 538, I was looking this up the other day, they have a little bit of an easier schedule than they did in the second half, but March is going to be really tough. Yes, they played Detroit 3 times. They still got the Pistons on the schedule for 3 times, but they got a road trip the second week of the second half of the season. They go to Denver, and then they got to play the Lakers on a back-to-back, and then they have an off day in LA, and then they got to play the Clippers. And then they got to go to they have another off day. They got to go to San Antonio, another off day, and then they finish with the Rockets, which I don't know what's going on in Houston now. They definitely have a problem there the last 13 or so games, but that's going to be a grueling stretch. And if they can come out of that stretch with maybe 2 wins, I think it would be a win. We talked about that road trip on our podcast a couple weeks ago, going to the West Coast, and I said, if they go 500, that would be great. Realistically, they probably go 2-4 and end up coming out 500. They steal one from the Suns. They probably should have beat Golden State. Maybe they had a chance against Golden State. They were up after 3 quarters in Utah, and then the Jazz just went nuts, chucking up 3, so they had a chance in that game. They're competitive in every game this season, and I forget what exactly their clutch ratings are in crunch time, but it's crazy. I mean, they're scoring like 98 points per 100 possessions. It's something absurd where it's just head and shoulders above the rest of the league. But coming into this season, the over-under, the experts in the desert had them at 25.5 wins, which is about what they had last year in 63 games. But now, per 538, their projected win total is about 32-40. I think they might finish a little bit better than that. They're going to have to probably going to have to play a little bit over 500 basketball to make the playoffs. And I think that's not out of the question with this team getting healthy, and they're going to have to just kind of do that. I mean, the last time that they were around 500 at the All-Star break was 2015-16. They were a game over 500 at the break. That was the last time they made the playoffs. So, history is kind of on their side a little bit, and it all depends on some of these other teams too. And, if teams are going to try to go out and get pieces like Toronto. Toronto is one of those teams that's going to try to go out and make a couple moves. Miami might be even active at the deadline. Those are the kind of the teams that are in front of them right now that are catchable. I think about the top 3 spots are the ones where you're looking and you're kind of like, okay, yeah, you're not going to catch those guys. But, I mean, if they play 500 ball, I don't think there's a reason that they can't be in the playoffs this season. I think that's kind of shifted to be the goal this year because, I mean, you want to get those guys like LaMelo Ball and some of those other younger guys that playoff experience so then you can really build that momentum moving forward to build a championship caliber team.
So you said that the fans are coming back, which is exciting because I live in Rock Hill, so I'm not too far away from the Charlotte Stadium. But how do you think the fans are going to embrace LaMelo and the team this year?
It's tough to say just because personally, I mean, I was brought on in this position at the end of January, so I'm still very new to the Charlotte area. I did live in Winston-Salem for about a year and a half before that. And when I went to a game last year right before everything shut down, and I think there's maybe like 10,000 people in the arena. But I mean, at that time, they were playing the Knicks too, so it was like, two not very good teams. Late February, early March. I mean, how many people are you really going to draw in a crowd like that? But the LaMelo effect has been real, especially on social media. I mean, the Twitter account now has over 1 million followers, and I think a lot of that has to do with a guy like LaMelo Ball. He has this big, I don't want to say cult-like following, but he has a big social media influence. There's a lot of people that are big LaMelo Ball fans that kind of noticed when he was in Australia, and he has the best-selling jersey in Australia right now. I mean, he played in Australia last year, but he only played 12 games. So it's not like he was there for a full season or anything like that. But I think the fans are really embracing this team. There's a lot of people that are still on the fence about if James Borrego is the right guy to lead this team, but he is a Greg Popovich descendant. He's just been kind of working with what he has had the past couple of years. And I think now that he has a guy like LaMelo Ball and he got a free agent like Gordon Hayward, I mean, at the beginning of the year when I saw that, they got Gordon Hayward and they drafted LaMelo Ball, I'm thinking, as a fan, this team might be pretty decent. I mean, if they're going to allow fans, I might have to drive down to Charlotte and check out a game because this team's going to be fun to watch. And they've been so much fun to watch. And I think a lot of the fans have kind of embraced that too. I want to say the Milwaukee game a couple weeks ago, or about a month ago now, when the Hornets beat Giannis in Milwaukee, and they beat them like pretty convincingly too. I think they ended up winning by about 12 or so. And it wasn't even that close in the fourth quarter. It seemed like Giannis and a couple of the other guys on the team kind of gave up because they were on the second night of a back-to-back. But that game, I think, was the highest rated game on the RSN in a long time. I want to say about 5 years or so. So, I mean, fans are engaged. Fans are excited. And I think it goes back to that LaMelo effect. Anytime you got a 19-year-old kid that's putting up numbers, like I said, compared to Oscar Robertson, I think it's just going to make that fan base just that more energetic. Because, again, it's been a long time since this Hornets fan base has had a lot of stuff to get hyped about.
Yeah, I'm definitely hyped about LaMelo Ball. I've enjoyed watching him this rookie season. Very much enjoyed watching the Hornets, a team that's definitely on the rise here in the NBA. Hopefully through this second half of the season, they can continue their decent stretch, hopefully make the playoffs and make some noise in the Eastern Conference. Rob, that is going to be it for this edition of our first episode. I can't thank you enough for joining me today on our debut show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Hopefully we can maybe do this again when the Hornets are in the playoffs.
Oh, yeah. Maybe our team, my Celtics, your Hornets, playing a playoff series. That'd be pretty awesome.
That'd be fun. That'd be a good series.
It would be. So, again, that's going to be it for this episode, the debut episode of the Alec Walt Show here on Down the Block Sports. I'm your host, Alec Walt, alongside the co-founder, Connor Robinson, our special guest, Rob Longo. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Down the Block Sports for more of our exclusive content. Thank you very much for tuning in, and have a good